On a Tuesday morning in June 2024, something impossible happened. A company that makes graphics cards for video games became more valuable than the entire stock market of Germany. By 2026, they didn't just pass countries, they became the economy. Nvidia isn't just a tech company anymore, it is the engine of the modern world. But this isn't a story about success. This is a story about a murder. Because while Nvidia was building the future, the greatest giant in American history was asleep at the wheel. For 30 years, Intel was the king. They built the silicon that ran the planet. They had the money, the factories, and the smartest engineers on Earth. Nvidia was just a pimple on their radar, a toy for gamers. So how did the nerd in the leather jacket defeat the Goliath of Silicon Valley? The answer isn't technology. It's psychology. To understand the death of Intel, we have to go back to a Denny's diner in 1993. The internet is barely a thing. Intel is the most powerful company in the world. Their CEO, Andy Grove, is a legend. His motto, "Only the paranoid survive?" Intel is a war machine. They ruthlessly crush competition. If you own a computer, it has an Intel sticker on it. Meanwhile, 3 engineers are sitting in a Denny's in San Jose. They have $40,000 and a bad idea. They want to make 3D graphics chips for PC games. At the time, gamers weren't a market. They were kids in basements. Wall Street laughed at them. Intel didn't even notice them. This is the first psychological trap: arrogance. Intel was a steamship. Massive, powerful, but slow. They focused on CPU, the brain of the computer. They thought graphics were just a toy. Nvidia almost died immediately. In 1997, they were 6 months away from bankruptcy. They had one shot to build a new chip, the Rivio 128. Jensen Huang did something insane. They didn't have money for a prototype, so they simulated the chip on a computer and sent it to manufacturing hoping it would work. If they were wrong, the company was dead. It worked. Nvidia survived. But they learned a lesson that Intel never did. You are always dying. While Intel was printing money, Nvidia was fighting in the mud. This suffering created a culture of desperation. Jensen Huang famously tells his employees every year, "Our company is 30 days from going out of business." Intel forgot how to suffer. They became bureaucrats. And in 2006, that bureaucracy made the biggest mistake in the history of technology. Steve Jobs walks into Intel. He has a secret project, a phone that's also a computer. He wants Intel to build the chip. Paul Otellini is the CEO of Intel. He looks at the numbers. He asks his data team, "How many of these iPhones will Apple sell?" The data said, "Not enough." The iPhone would be a niche product. Intel wouldn't make enough profit to justify the factory space. Otellini trusted the spreadsheet. He said no to Steve Jobs. Apple went to Samsung instead. Then they started making their own chips. Intel missed the smartphone revolution entirely. They missed the biggest wave of tech in history because they were addicted to certainty. While Intel was playing it safe, Jensen Huang was committing corporate suicide. He launched something called CUDA. Here is the simple explanation. CPUs, Intel, are like a Ferrari, fast but can only carry 2 people. GPUs, Nvidia, are like a fleet of 1,000 buses, slow individually, but they can move 1,000,000 people at once. Jensen wanted to let scientists use his buses for math, not just games, but nobody wanted it. Wall Street hated it. It cost Nvidia billions of dollars a year to support CUDA. For 10 years, Nvidia's stock went nowhere. But Jensen refused to kill CUDA. He called it investing in a $0 billion market. Intel wanted quarterly profits. Nvidia was willing to wait a decade. This is the difference between a manager and a founder. Then, the luck arrived. In 2012, 3 researchers in Toronto figured out that you could use Nvidia's graphics cards to train artificial intelligence. They bought 2 gaming cards from Best Buy, and they changed the world. Suddenly, every researcher on Earth realized, wait, Nvidia chips aren't for gaming. They are brains. Intel tried to catch up. They spent billions buying AI startups. They bought Nirvana, they bought Movidius, they bought Habana, but it didn't work. Why? Because of that suicide mission Jensen started in 2006. CUDA. All the AI software in the world was written for Nvidia. If you wanted to use Intel, you had to rewrite your code. Nobody wanted to do that. Nvidia had a monopoly, not because their chips were faster, but because their software was the only language scientists spoke. In 2016, Jensen hand-delivered the first AI supercomputer to a tiny nonprofit called OpenAI. He signed it to the future of computing. He was prefetching the future. He wasn't waiting for demand. He was building the machine that would create the demand. While Nvidia was arming the AI revolution, Intel was rotting from the inside. Intel makes its own chips. It's a point of pride. But they got stuck. For 5 years, they couldn't figure out how to make their transistors smaller. They were stuck on 14 nanometers while their rival, TSMC, moved to 10, then 7, then 5. The final nail in the coffin came from an old friend, Apple. In 2020, Apple fired Intel. They replaced Intel chips with their own M1 chips. It was humiliating. The world realized that Intel technology was obsolete. Intel brought in a new CEO, Pat Gelsinger, to save the ship. But turning a Titanic takes time, and time was something they didn't have. November 30th, 2022, OpenAI launches ChatGPT. Overnight, every company on Earth, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Amazon, needed thousands of AI chips immediately. There was only one company selling them, the Nvidia H100. It costs $40,000. The margin? Nearly 90%. It is the most profitable manufactured object in human history. Nvidia's revenue didn't just go up, it went vertical. They made more profit in one quarter than Intel made in years. By 2025, the war was over. Nvidia was the most valuable company on Earth. Intel was laying off 15,000 people and begging the US government for CHIPS Act money just to keep the lights on. So what is the lesson? How did the ant eat the giant? Intel got comfortable. They let accountants run the company instead of the engineers. They optimized for today's stock price. Nvidia ignored the data. The data said CUDA was a waste of money. The data said gamers were a niche market. Jensen Huang didn't look at where the market was. He looked at where the physics of computing had to go. Intel built the chips that let us write documents and browse the web. But Nvidia built the chips that are learning to think. The king is dead. Long live the king.